The North American F-86 Sabre, sometimes called the Sabre jet, was a transonic jet fighter aircraft produced by North American Aviation. The Sabre is best known as the United States' first swept-wing fighter, which could counter the similarly winged Soviet MiG-15 in high-speed dogfights over the skies of the Korean War. Considered one of the best and most important fighter aircraft in that war, the F-86 is also rated highly in comparison with fighters of other eras. Although it was developed in the late 1940s and was outdated by the end of the 50s, the Sabre proved versatile and adaptable, and continued as a frontline fighter in numerous air forces until the last active operational examples were retired by the Bolivian Air Force in 1994. Its success led to an extended production run of more than 7,800 aircraft between 1949 and 1956, in the US, Japan and Italy. Variants were built in Canada and Australia. The Canadair Sabre added another 1,815 airframes, and the significantly redesigned CAC Sabre had a production run of 112. The Sabre was by far the most produced Western jet fighter, with total production of all variants at 9,860 units. Development. North American Aviation had produced the propeller-powered P-51 Mustang in World War II, which saw combat against some of the first operational jet fighters. By late 1944, North American proposed its first jet fighter to the U.S. Navy, which became the FJ-1 Fury. It was an unexceptional transitional jet fighter which had a straight wing derived from the P-51. Initial proposals to meet a United States Army Air Force's requirement for a medium-range, single-seat, high-altitude jet-powered day escort fighter-bomber were drafted in mid-1944. In early 1945, North American Aviation submitted 4 designs. The USAAF selected one design over the others, and granted North American a contract to build 3 examples of the XP-86. Deleting specific requirements from the FJ-1 Fury, coupled with other modifications, allowed the XP-86 to be lighter and considerably faster than the Fury, with an estimated top speed of 582 miles per hour, versus the Fury's 547 miles per hour. Despite the gain in speed, early studies revealed the XP-86 would have the same performance as its rivals, the XP-80 and XP-84. It was also feared that, because these designs were more advanced in their development stages, the XP-86 would be cancelled. Crucially, the XP-86 would not be able to meet the required top speed of 600 miles per hour. North American had to quickly come up with a radical change that could leapfrog it over its rivals. The North American F-86 Sabre was the first American aircraft to take advantage of flight research data seized from the German aerodynamicists at the end of World War II. This data showed that a thin swept wing could greatly reduce drag and delay compressibility problems which had bedeviled even prop-powered fighters, such as the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, approaching the speed of sound. By 1944, German engineers and designers had established the benefits of swept wings based on experimental designs dating back to 1940. Study of the data showed that a swept wing would solve their speed problem, while a slat on the wing's leading edge which extended at low speeds would enhance low-speed stability. Because development of the XP-86 had reached an advanced stage, the idea of changing the sweep of the wing was met with resistance from some senior North American staff. Despite stiff opposition, after good results were obtained in wind tunnel tests, the swept wing concept was eventually adopted. Performance requirements were met by incorporating a 35 degrees swept back wing, using NACA 4-digit modified airfoils. using NACA0009 5-64 at the root and NACA0008 5-64 at the tip, with an automatic slat design based on that of the Messerschmitt Me 262 and an electrically adjustable stabilizer, another feature of the Me 262A. Many Sabres had the 6-3 wing, retrofitted after combat experience was gained in Korea. This modification changed the wing airfoils to the NACA0009 6-4 mod at the root and the NACA0008 1-64 mod at the tip. Delays caused by the major redesign meant that manufacturing did not begin until after World War II. The XP-86 prototype, which would lead to the F-86 Sabre, was rolled out on 8 August 1947. The maiden flight occurred on 1 October 1947 with George Welch at the controls, flying from Muroc Dry Lake, California. The United States Air Force's Strategic Air Command had F-86 Sabres in service from 1949 through 1950. The F-86s were assigned to the 22nd Bomb Wing, the 1st Fighter Wing and the 1st Fighter Interceptor Wing. The F-86 was the primary U.S. air combat fighter during the Korean War, with significant numbers of the first 3 production models seeing combat. The F-86 Sabre was also produced under license by Canadair Limited as the Canadair Sabre. The final variant of the Canadian Sabre, the Mark Chapter 6, is generally rated as having the highest capabilities of any Sabre version made anywhere. Breaking sound barrier and other records. The F-86A set its first official world speed record of 670 miles per hour in September 1948. Still some 32 miles per hour short of Heine Dickmer's 702 miles per hour unofficial rocket-powered aircraft speed record set with an Me-163B prototype in early July 1944 tests, which itself had a 23.3 degrees wing sweep-back angle. Several people involved with the development of the F-86, including the chief aerodynamicist for the project and one of its other test pilots, claimed that North American test pilot George Welch had unofficially broken the sound barrier in a dive with the XP-86 while on a test flight on 1 October 1947. Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier on 14 October 1947 in the rocket-propelled Bell X-1 during level flight, making it the first true supersonic aircraft. 5 years later, on 18 May 1953, Jacqueline Cochran became the first woman to break the sound barrier, flying a one-off Canadian-built F-86 Sabre Mk3, alongside Chuck Yeager. Carl K.K. Compton won the 1951 Bendix Air Race in an F-86A with an average speed of 553.76 miles per hour. Design overview. The F-86 was produced as both a fighter interceptor and fighter bomber. Several variants were introduced over its production life, with improvements and different armament implemented. The XP-86 was fitted with a General Electric J35C3 jet engine that produced 4,000 lb-f of thrust. This engine was built by GM's Chevrolet division until production was turned over to Allison. The General Electric J47GE7 engine was used in the F-86A1, producing a thrust of 5,200 lb-f, while the General Electric J73GE3 engine of the F-86H produced 9,250 lb-f of thrust. The fighter-bomber version could carry up to 2,000 pounds of bombs, including an external fuel-type tank that could carry napalm. Unguided 2.75-in rockets were used on some fighters on training missions, but 5-inch rockets were later carried on combat operations. The F-86 could also be fitted with a pair of external jettisonable jet fuel tanks that extended the range of the aircraft. Both the interceptor and fighter-bomber versions carried 60.50 in M3 Browning machine guns with electrically boosted feed in the nose cannons, instead of machine guns. firing at a rate of 1,200 rounds per minute. The 50-in guns were harmonized to converge at 1,000 feet in front of the aircraft, using armor-piercing and armor-piercing incendiary rounds, with one armor-piercing incendiary tracer for every 5 AP or API rounds. The API rounds used during the Korean War contained magnesium, which were designed to ignite upon impact but burn poorly above 35,000 feet. His oxygen levels were insufficient to sustain combustion at that height. Initial planes were fitted with the Mark Chapter 18 manual ranging computing gun sight. The last 24 F-86A5 NAS and F-86E were equipped with the A1CM gun sight and APG-30 radar, which used radar to automatically compute a target's range, which later proved to be advantageous against MiG opponents over Korea. Flying characteristics: the Sabre's swept wings and jet engine produced a flying experience that was very different from the pinnacle generation of propeller-driven fighters that were operational in the early days of jet fighter development in the 1940s and early 1950s. The transition from props to jets was not without accidents and incidents even for experienced fighter pilots. Early on in the jet age, some U.S. manufacturers instituted safety and transition programs where experienced test and production pilots would tour operational fighter squadrons to provide instruction and demonstrations designed to lower the accident rate. As well, the ongoing technical development in long production history of the F-86 resulted in some significant differences in the handling and flying characteristics between the various F-86 models. Some of the major changes to the design included the switch from an elevator stabilizer to an all-flying tail, the discontinuation of leading-edge slats in favor of a solid leading edge with increased internal fuel capacity, increased engine power and internal missile bay. Each of these design changes impacted the handling and flying characteristics of the F-86 and not necessarily for the better. In the case of the solid leading edge and increased internal fuel capacity, the design change produced increased combat performance, but exacerbated a dangerous and often fatal handling characteristic upon takeoff if the nose was raised prematurely from the runway. This over-rotation danger is now a major area of instruction and concern for current F-86 pilots. The 1972 Sacramento Canadair Sabre accident, resulting in 22 fatalities and 28 other casualties, was a result of over-rotation on takeoff.